All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I've been going over the PowerPoint presentations for Murachs, JavaScript, and jQuery 3rd edition as part of the AWD Application and Web Development 1000 Web Technologies class. I am smack dab in the middle of Chapter 12 of 18. Chapter 12 is on how to use Ajax, JSON, and Flickr. So, continuing on, all right. What you see here is the syntax of the $.ajax method, including some of the options, but not all of them for the method. Besides a function that's executed when the request is successful, this method has options for functions that are done before the request is sent, when the request finishes, after the data is returned, but before it's passed to the success function, and when an error occurs. So this gives you a lot of control over basically the entire operation. Now here, all four of these functions, as you can see, have different parameters. One of these parameters is JQXHR, which refers to the jQuery XHR object. This object is what's called a superset of the standard XHR object and includes the properties of the XML HTTP request. That means you can use the properties that are shown here within that object. Now, one thing that's discussed here right there is JSON-P. And JSON-P stands for JSON with padding. It's a complement to JSON data that lets you request data from a server in a different domain. Typically, that's prohibited by web browsers due to what's called their cross-domain security policies. So in other words, you can't typically go from one web server to the other because it's a trust type of issue. All right. So the example that's shown here, and it looks very similar to the ones that we've looked at before, all right, when successful, this application, all right, in figure 1211 is very similar to the ones we've looked at earlier. However, the $.ajax method sets a timeout option of 10,000 milliseconds. So in other words, it'll time out if it doesn't find the file or whatever it's looking for after 10 seconds. In addition, it provides two functions besides the function for successful completion. Now, what the author spends quite a bit of time on next is talking about how to use Ajax for Flickr. 3, 4, 5. It's the last 10 or so pages of the chapter. Now, Flickr is a website that allows you to store photos online for free. So you can access your photos anywhere as long as you can connect to their website. All right. The idea, as the author mentions here, is not to show you how to use Flickr, but rather to show you how to use the application program interface, the API, for any website that lets you retrieve data using a URL. So again, Flickr is a website that allows you to store photos for free, meaning, as we said, you can access them as long as you can connect to their site. Since you can also store a description for each photo that includes a thumbnail, the site can be used as a simple CMS or content management system. This table that you see right here lists the different feeds that Flickr provides. The feed you'll use most often is the public photos and video feed, the first one that's right there. That's the one they use in the example here. Now, to retrieve the data from the public photo feed, you start with the base URL that's shown in the figure up on top here. Then you add one or more of the query parameters shown in this table. All right. For example, to retrieve photos only for a specific user, you can include the ID parameter as illustrated in this example here. Now, the table that's shown here, and it's on page 361 in the book, summarizes the Flickr data items that are returned from a photo feed. All right, the data item represents the collection of returned items. you can use this as the first parameter in the each method, so you can basically loop through or process each item. Then within the callback function there, you can use the other data items in the table. So the example here is designed to show you how this works. All right, there's an example of a Flickr feed. So you can use this to set yourself up with your own application. So in other words, we could do something like this, and I could set something like this up with maybe my picture in it, stuff like this in it, and what we could do is basically I could go through Flickr and show you all of my photos. All right. In some cases, they mention here that it might be helpful to see the JSON that's returned for the website. Then you can identify the data items that you can use in the application in case they're not included in the documentation for the API, or if they're difficult to find in that documentation, or if it's even difficult to understand. So this figure shows how to display the descriptions for the photos in a Flickr feed. In the example at the top of the figure, you see a description of the first photo in the feed. The description starts with a thumbnail image of a full image. The thumbnail is followed by the text that describes the photo. In the jQuery code for the application, you can see that the parameters are used for the URL. And again, never done anything like this. All right, so I'm just talking you through it, so to speak. All right. And to finish with this, so far we've seen examples that retrieve photos from Flickr that were posted by a specific user, that had specific tags, or that did both. This one shows how you can retrieve photos that have been posted by anyone and that have one or more tags entered by a user. So it would basically, as it says, it would show you anything out there where you could use a search and you could see anyone's photos. All right, that pretty much is it. So we have now gone through the first 12 chapters. When I return, which will be tomorrow, I'm going to start on Section 3, Advanced Java Skills. First, we're going to go through Chapter 13, where we'll learn more about working with numbers and strings, and then we'll go through Chapter 14, where we'll talk about how to handle exceptions and how to use regular expressions. That'll be tomorrow. The next day will be Chapters 15 and 16, where 15 is how to work with a web browser, including cookies and web storage, 16, which is on arrays, and then the next day I'll go through 17 and 18, which again, like this chapter that we just went over, Chapter 17, which is on objects, Chapter 18, which is on closures, modules, and immediately invoked function expressions, or IIFEs. I will go through the PowerPoints